Welcome aboard the Par Train. I am Ev. This is Serm.
What's up, Ev?
Serm, we are fired up. We just had a great conversation. Welcome aboard the Par Train, guys. In case you're new, we help frustrated golfers enjoy the ride again, because if you can learn to smile through bad golf, you can smile through anything. You guys are going to absolutely love this interview with Andrew Emery. Played pro golf for years. Now he's a great coach. And if you want to get fired up for 2024 and you want to play your best golf this year, this episode is for you. So if you guys like this interview, hop aboard the channel and subscribe now. And what do they got to do, sir?
Just enjoy the ride.
Enjoy the ride, guys. Take care. Andrew Emery, welcome aboard the Par Train, my man. We're happy to have you.
Evan and Matt, thank you for having me.
Good to see you, Andrew.
So we got a ton we want to get into, but first we got to start with the obvious question. You've given golf lessons to 3 Cermaks, Pat, Mike, Matt's 2 brothers, and even the original old man Cermak, the father. What is it like giving a golf lesson to the Cermak boys? Did they listen? Are they difficult? Do they know what's going on? Give us a little bit of a look behind the curtain.
I can't do that. I've actually been sworn to secrecy. With Mr. Cermak has some serious Chicago connections, and I just can't go there. You know, I can't actually go there. No, I mean it was a privilege. I'll be quite honest with you. Just a wonderful family, and a lot of great times on that driving range. You guys know that it's a lot more about teaching golf. You know, there's a human element to what we do, and you know, while all of these golfers are tremendously talented in their own ways, they would all argue that they're better than each other. It was certainly a lot of fun. We had some great times out there.
Would you say the old man's got the best move?
He's got the best golf shoes, period.
Oh, that's true.
Best golf shoes. What were his golf shoes?
Like he's got 12 pairs of the original classics.
We're talking the
all
old,
different colors.
The old icons, right? Patent orange, patent pink, patent yellow.
Oh, he's a color guy.
The color guy, and he's got the cigar that I don't know how the left shoulder. I mean, the cigar, the left shoulder. He had like ash marks, you know, on when he was swinging well. He had ash marks on it. Because when he wasn't, just wouldn't reach.
He swings with the cigar.
You didn't hear that from me.
Yeah, no, he's incredible with the cigar.
Totally.
Huge stogie, great balance, great turn. Doesn't move.
Who's the best?
So he's old school. What can I say? Old school. And you know what? Some would argue I'm rather old school too, but that's okay. That's the way it should be.
Yeah,
that's right.
Who's the best student, Andrew? Pat, Mike, or the old man?
You really put me on the spot, guys. This isn't nice. This isn't nice. I would say possibly Michael, I think.
Yeah,
possibly Michael. He was the most really driven and motivated and just into it. He was really into it and really wanted to get better. You know, it doesn't take away from the other guys, but it's like there's nothing better than working with a motivated student, right?
Yeah.
You know, there's nothing better.
Mike's got that intensity that sticks out. Maybe not the best dresser, you know, we can say that.
Maybe not.
But
but you know, it's like you got what I would describe as the clean teacup. You ever heard of this before?
No.
So we've got 4 types of people, right? When it comes to students, and I use tea because, of course, I'm from the old country. But we've got 4 cups, and I represent basically the water, right? The information that's going into the cups, and each type of student is represented by each type of cup. You know, the first cup is turned upside down, right? And that's the type of student that is basically coming to you because they had a friend that said, you got to see this guy, you got to, and it's like they don't really want to, but they do it anyway, just to check the box, right? And you pour the water in, and it just doesn't go in. Nothing's going in, right? And the next teacup, of course, is the right way around, but there's a hole in the bottom. We all know who those guys are, right? You pour the information in, goes in one end and out the other. And then I know a lot of your listeners are going to be familiar with the dirty teacup, which is the one where, you know, you have the student come to you and they've got 65 things that they're already working on. The cup is filthy. And, you know, you're going to pour your nice, clean information, and they're just going to mix it in with what's already going on in their head. And then, of course, the last one is the clean one, right? Is turn the right way up, clean, put, and you bop it in. But I mean, our job as coaches is to turn the first cup the right way round, put a hole in the second one, clean the third one, and get them all clean, right? I mean, get them all ready to go. And that's the interesting thing about the psychology of golfers and working with students. But it's always, you could tell fairly quickly early on in a lesson, you know, which cup was belonging to which person.
Yeah, that's funny.
I love that. Well, Andrew, as you said, it's great to have you on the show. I can joke about my family all day. I'm happy to do it, but we want to give a little bit of an intro to our listeners about you. You know, tell us, you know, again, we don't want to get too much into the weeds and swing instruction, but help us understand your philosophy, because I think I have you quoted as there is a pandemic, or there's an epidemic right now of over instruction. So talk about your approach, the Andrew Emery approach.
My approach, if you want to impress people, make it complicated. If you want to help them, make it simple. That's basically the macro approach that I have when I teach. And I learned to teach that way being at a country club for 20 years, right? I mean, the locker room is very small. And I've had a very unique, I guess, experience when it comes to coaching, because I've worked with a half a dozen tour players. I've traveled to 3 or 4 different continents. You know, I've been to Augusta, I've been to the Players Championship, I've been to the Solheim Cup, working with elite golfers. So I have that experience. But when it comes to recreational golfers, you know, splitting a screen and then putting somebody, you know, someone next to Scotty Scheffler and then starting to make comparisons is problematic, to say the least. And it's not that we can't learn from what the best players are doing, but I just don't believe that you should have to subscribe to any one method of coaching. You know, I think that the job of the coach is to meet their students where they are. And at a country club, you've got no choice. I mean, you're working with people that I work with people that had knee replacements, hip replacements, back problems. I've worked with people that had multiple sclerosis. I've worked with golfers that have had strokes. One gentleman I worked with drove up onto the driving range in the spring, and he said to me, "You thought you had it difficult before, you've really got it hard now." And he was attached to his golf cart that he drove up from Florida. He had a stroke the previous winter, paralyzed on his left side. And he's like, "Let's go." You know, he's ready to roll. So my students are the people that taught me how to teach, you know, and I've had mentors and I've read all the books, and the technology has come a heck of a long way, and it's very useful. Technology has been amazing. But at the end of the day, guys, it's just a lot of window dressing until you get on that lesson tee. You know, and you kind of figure out what works and what doesn't. So there's no real replacement for experience. You know what I'm saying?
Absolutely.
Yeah, I'm actually going, this is good timing, Andrew, because I'm going through it now, where Serm and I made 2024 goals at the start of the year. And Cermax was, just to give you some context, to get back into competitive golf and try and qualify for a US Mid-Am. He hasn't played competitively since college, right? For me, I was probably the dirty cup that you described. I want to learn. I'm motivated. I'll spend the time, but I'm trying to use the wrong information or trying to fix something that isn't the problem or the root cause, and I'm not getting real help. I was trying to do it myself, or pick something out from this video or pick something out from this interview. And I just realized, like, my goal was, don't change anything without the guidance of your coach, and get one coach and work together and start from scratch and build on something together. Right. And something I've learned, what you made me think of, is I think it kind of has to start with cleaning the cup. Like, to your point, like, I think, do all good teachers start with stripping things away in your mind?
The analogy I use, and I have this conversation, because I think, you know, when you first meet with someone, if you're working with an elite golfer, you got to look at stats, right? You got to go back and you got to figure out, you know, when they were playing well, what were they doing well? Because they haven't got to where they are for no reason, right? So you don't need to reinvent the wheel. But what you've got to figure out is what's relevant and what isn't. And really, it's all about, it's about ball flight. Mindset is obviously incredibly important. We can go there. That's a massive, massive part of this whole thing. But in terms of, your swing mechanics, I use an imaginary whiteboard. And I say to them, I want you to write down on this whiteboard all the things that you're thinking about in your golf swing. Mm. And then they give me those things, and you would be shocked, or maybe not shocked, how many things I write down.
Yeah, and nothing surprises me with it anymore.
It's unbelievable, right? Now, if a coach doesn't have that interview and they immediately start teaching, you are doomed, right? You're doomed before you even start the golf lesson. So you've got to ask the right questions. That's one of the biggest ones. And what you're going to do is you're going to go down that whiteboard and you're going to erase the 95% of the things on that board that are absolutely irrelevant. What I mean by irrelevant is if they're not influencing contact, distance, or direction, they are window dressing, right? Mm-hmm. And the biggest challenge with coaching, in my opinion, is making changes for the sake of making changes because they don't look right. When much of the time, they're simply characteristics, ironically, that work very well for that student. So you've got to, when it talks about cause and effect, imagine changing Dustin Johnson's lead wrist flexion, 17 degrees flexed, okay? Or Jim Furyk's loop in his swing, right? Fortunately, those guys were left alone and they played, right? And they were super competitive. But there's a lot of kids growing up, especially juniors, that become obsessed with perfection. And I think it's a trap that us coaches, that's what we do. We teach, we coach, right? It's very, very easy to get caught up in that. And it's a very slippery slope. You've got to be quite careful. I'll be quite honest with you. It's an interesting subject, but you got to make sure, whoever you work with, number one, 90 days minimum. Give your coach give him 90 P90X, right?
Yeah.
Give him 90 days. Give him 90 days. Like,
I did that in college.
So many people in the YouTube space, it's like, it's the Band-Aid.
Yeah.
I mean, one and dones. And I can sense the one and dones immediately. I mean, I'm doing multiple lessons now, indoors, virtual. I mean, we're talking everywhere from Barbados, Japan, Thailand, the UK, Australia. I mean, it's crazy. YouTube has been amazing, right? Unfortunately for me, I'm attracting the type of what you would describe as avatar, of people that are really vested and interested in getting better. They kind of understand that process, right? But the one and dones, you can sense it, right? And the one and dones, you'll give a lesson, you'll tell them to work on it a while, and you'll teach them how to practice, because that's incredibly important. You have to practice proficiently, okay? Different stages you have to go through. And then like 2 days later on WhatsApp, I've got like links to YouTube videos from the same person, from another coach. Like, what do you think of this? And I'm like, oh, here we go. It's all over, right? It's just like a dark hole out there. And I know that a lot of your listeners, once you get into that YouTube, it is a dark hole. And there's a lot of information out there that takes you from one direction to another, to another, to another. And you really have to find what works best for you. It is a process of elimination. There's no question.
So Andrew, you've talked about we've got to get, well, it doesn't have to be it's you're getting back to the art of instruction.
Yeah.
To help golfers, right? Like you said, you work with top juniors, you work with best players in the world at the professional level, you work with those weekend warriors. Talk about the art of instruction and maybe what's been the challenge in the last 15 years in teaching for coaches or teachers that don't seem to care about it.
Well, when I talk about the art of instruction, it's essentially kind of reverse engineering ball flight, back to the swing, not the other way around, swing and then ball flight. Right. So let's just say a lot of elite golfers, for example, it's all about body segments, right? It's about sequence, right? Rhythm is sequence. We've got the hands, we've got the arms, we've got the upper body, we've got the lower body. It's not that complicated. You can make it complicated, but it's not that complicated. So you take a junior out on the golf course that's driving their lower body out in front. Club gets stuck in a lot of hooks, right? The high-speed golfers, they get stuck in the fast lane, but they're hitting a lot of hooks. So the job of a high-speed golfer is to stabilize their face to have more control. Now, your low-speed golfers, they drive in the slow lane, right? They tend to spin their bodies. Their hands and arm speed is very slow, right? So for those golfers, you're going to get their hand and arm speed a little faster relative to the speed of their body, right? So when we talk about trying to find what works for you, there's no real one way of doing it. That's what I mean about the art of instruction. Like for me to stand here and say, you know, I've had people say, you know, what's your method? You know, what do you, I'm like, dude, I'm going to find the best golfer inside of you, right? I mean, that's my job, right? Based on your limitations, your athleticism, your time and inclination to practice, a number of factors, okay? And we've got to, you know, we've got wants and needs, right? I want a Porsche 911 GTS so badly you can't even imagine it. I need a kid carrier, okay? So that's what I got. You ask a lot of golfers what they want. I want to hit it 20 yards further. You know, what they need is to learn to be able to pitch it from 20 yards and not take 3 shots to get on the green. So, you know, as I say, it's incumbent on the coach to kind of get to the bottom of what works for each individual. And it's definitely a challenge, there's no question. But, you know, I think it's just being creative in your approach. I mean, I talked to Wayman yesterday. I was out at Stono Ferry, wonderful course here in Chicago. Many thanks to Pete Skirpstus. He's the director of operations out there. And I was at the back of the range, College Charleston, a fantastic facility. I was working with Wayman. And, you know, he's getting a little vertical, right? So we worked on hitting draws, right? Had him walk, he's a lefty, so had him walk around the circle to the right and filmed him. And all of a sudden, he's got some depth in his backswing. He's not really thinking about it. But, you know, his line started to improve. And all we've got him doing is focusing on a different start line. And it's just naturally starting to drip feed his way into his golf swing. Now, I could have stood there and worked on 3 stages of the backswing. But what he's going to do is he's going to get out on the golf course because he's got some events coming up. And he's going to play 2 balls and he's going to have a draw pattern. Okay. And then he's going to work his way back to neutral again. So there are different ways to do it with the intention of playing and taking it to the golf course and being creative. Okay. If you're stuck the other way underneath it, I know a lot of your viewers are underneath it. You know, you got to try and get that divot working the other way. Okay. You're going to have more of a pull fade, right? You got to work on trying to start the ball left. Maybe you're going to try and hit the ball a little bit lower. So, you know, you can do wonderful things with creativity based on trying to actually hit different shots as opposed to getting caught up in positions in the golf swing. And it's not to say it's not important to stand there and work on positions, but I think it's important to also do everything with the target in mind, with intention, you know, with a shot or a pattern in mind. I just don't feel there's enough of that. There's so much analysis is what I'm trying to get to. It's like analyzing everything.
And that, right. I think that connects with you, Ev, because it's like, well, then we got to go play, you know, work on all this stuff, but how do I go think and how do I go play?
Yeah, Andrew, it's been really eye-opening this last month of how much I conditioned myself to panic and try and fix and solve problems immediately after something happens. And this is just on the range. The course is another story. And pulling myself back on the range and saying, it doesn't matter right now. What I'm doing right now is I'm trying to learn a motion and a feel. Does my feel match the motion?
You got it.
What am I trying to learn? Oh, okay. I finally learned how with rhythm, the club will naturally hinge. I don't need to try and hinge. Let me try and feel that natural hinge and swing with rhythm to a release. I was always a guy that held on, right? So
that's what I see all the time, my man. I mean, you're spot on. It's like you take it one step further, let's back up even more.
Yeah.
Rhythm is where you place the speed in your swing. Tempo is the overall speed or ratio of the golf swing. They're a little bit different, okay? Rhythm starts with tension. No question about right? You can't imagine how much tension I experience in the joints, the wrists, the elbows, and the transition, the upper arms, biceps, triceps here, lock up, right? Your arms lock up, you transition spin, right? You don't get rid of the golf club. When I say get rid of the golf club, guys, I'm not talking about dumping the club. I'm talking about upper arm, lower arm, wrist, okay? Swinging motion of the golf club. And that's what's missing for so many golfers. And 90% of the golfers that are watching this right now need to understand the importance of swinging the golf club with the support of the body. And it doesn't mean the body doesn't have a role, all right? But elite golfers understand how to create speed with their hands and arms, right? They have permission to work on a lot of the things that you see on YouTube when it comes to creating depth, for example, okay, and getting open, right side bend for those golfers that have very strong grips. You've got permission to work on that. When you've got a recreational golfer that's got an enormous amount of tension, that's never actually learned to articulate their wrist and swing their arms, and they're watching videos that are telling them to use their body even more.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. It's not only, I mean, I've got emails every day. I'm getting emails. Okay. People getting injured, right? Because they don't have the mobility, internal hip mobility. They've got issues there. So yeah, I mean, you have already in you some wonderful athleticism. You can work on a swing feel. There is absolutely nothing wrong with that. But you need to get out there and you need to swing with a degree of reckless abandon. And that is the biggest challenge, ultimately, is when we get out on the golf course, we start focusing on results. And once your mindset moves to results, it creates tension.
Mm-hmm.
That's the overriding issue, right?
Yeah.
You know, emotional self-regulation. I mean, that's what psychology is. Psychology is emotional self-regulation. And it's much easier to work on that when you're trying to find the best version of yourself with the golf swing, with a target in mind, than it is trying to control what the ball is doing, which is result orientated.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I love what Bryson DeChambeau says about this. Somebody asked him, "Hey, I get nervous on the first tee." He goes, "Yeah, everybody gets nervous. What are you thinking about, Bryson?" He goes, "I'm just so obsessed with my target and what my feel is. I want to hit a high draw here." Now, I don't want to get too much into Bryson, right? But like when you think about target and you think about your move and your feel, that distracts you from everything else that's trying to get inside. Because Adam and I talk about this a lot, Andrew. You can't block out the thoughts, but you can manage them.
No,
right?
you can't. You absolutely can't. It's replacing a negative thought with a positive thought. You can't think of both at the same time. I played golf with Justin Smoke yesterday, who played for the Blue Jays, bounced around. He was 10 years in the majors. 1 year, I think he had 35 home runs. It was unbelievable. And I can get away with this because I'm from England, but he's a fantastic guy. We had a heck of a lot of fun out there. And I said, "Were you a hitter or were you a pitcher?" And I already kind of knew, but I just asked him anyway. We were just giving each other a hard time. He said, I was a hitter. I was a switch hitter." I said, "Well, that's a shame." He's like,
"Oh, yeah.
What do you mean?
I just learned this. Yeah. Right? I know where you're going."
So I said, "Well, pitchers react to targets." I said, "Hitters react to the ball." And he just was so inquisitive. He's like, keep going. But ultimately, it's when you're reacting to the ball, right? You have generally a hit reflex or a violent disruption. Hitters are a lot broader. Generally, good hitters are broader, shorter arms, incredibly strong upper body. Pitchers, a lot of them are very long, like me in many sense, right? I'm 6'4", I'm kind of a skinny guy. And they have a suppleness in their arms. They also are very tactile. So they use their wrists a lot. They use their hands a lot to create different spins, right? So it's no shock that pitchers are better golfers than hitters. Now, having said that, the dude's been playing for 3 years. And I think he shot 78 yesterday. 3 years he's been playing golf. It was unbelievable watching him. But it's so interesting, when you think about that. There's a lot of elite athletes out there that really struggle. I've worked with a couple of NBA centers as well, both over 7 feet tall. The clubs were like mallets. I'll never forget it, how big, they fitted. The grips were like triple. It was just crazy how heavy these clubs were, And it was just, it was clumsy, you know what I mean? And they're just lunging at it with their body because they're used to using their body, right? But they're conflating strength with speed, right? They're conflating strength with speed.
I think I do
And
that as well, actually.
that's
That's a
what I
good way to
see
talk
most
about it.
amateurs do, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah. So I actually just learned this from my coach where um this was so fascinating to me. He said, if you look at pretty much every home run hit in the majors and what that swing is, that is a 60-yard slice off the golf course. It is here, the face is wide open, and the barrel of the bat is basically a wide open face, right?
Yeah.
And he was using the similar analogy. He was like, why do you think Tom Glavine and Greg Maddux are two of the best golfers of major league players? And it's
And
because
John Smoltz, the whole team.
John, he basically was like, the golf swing is basically the pitching motion, but tilted down towards the ball.
That's a wonderful comment. Yeah, I mean, I couldn't agree with you more than that. I mean, say that sums it all up. I mean, obviously we've got a kinematic sequence. I'm not here to say that's not the case. It's crazy. It's well and truly a lower body, upper body, arms, hands, and club. But you have a real sequence. That's that. And you have a feel sequence, right? And it's the feel sequence that's the challenge, right? So you get someone who's a little older. I mean, I say older, even in their late 30s and 40s, they're not the way they were when they're 18. And they don't have the ability to be able to separate some of these segments. So they know they need to use their body, and they drive their body out in front of the arms, right? And then the body has to slow down, and then the arms have to catch up. And then the first thing they're going to tell you is you stand on the driving range, you look at them, and the first thing they're going to say is, I feel like I've just got an arm swing. It just feels like an arm swing. I want to use my body more. No matter that, they never got better, right? When the truth of it is they've got no choice but to finish their swing with their arms because their body's in front of their arms. So my point is this: the golf swing is a marriage between so many different parts, right? It's a harmonious motion that all has to come together at that point of collision. Boom, 1/4000th of a second, right? When the club hits the golf ball. But for the vast majority of golfers, you'd be far better served almost feeling like your arms are employing your body on the way through the golf shot. It's the feel sequence that I like to call it. And again, people take you literally like, what are you talking about? But the best players in the world, what people don't realize is they create more vertical speed with their arms in the transition than you can possibly imagine. 20 plus miles an hour, before they even get to that delivery position here, right? Relative to the speed their body's turning. Amateurs, they move their arms and body very much at the same speed.
Yeah.
No one talks about it, but that's just a fact. So peak arm speed is way before impact. Everyone thinks peak arm speed's at the ball. No, your arms slow down as you approach impact. They don't speed up. So that's what I'm saying, right? So it's important to understand that. So in order to create peak arm speed, you got to monitor the tension in your joints. There we go. Back to square one. So it's like sweep the golf club freely, allow the golf ball to be captured. Don't hit at it. Send it like a pitcher would send it. And you'll find the best version of you. I mean, I'm not talking about breaking your swing down and starting all over. You'd be shocked. A couple of adjustments to ball position and setup, making sure the grip's in a good position so you can articulate your wrists, obviously. Bad grips, huge problem. And then basically just get someone swinging with a degree of freedom. And then it's unbelievable. You can't even believe. I've got videos on my YouTube channel, of lessons I've given. These people have maybe one swing feel, and you wouldn't even believe the difference in their golf swing with one swing feel. You don't need to over-instruct. It's just not necessary.
Yeah. My last point on what I've learned recently, and then I got a question for you about when you played, is I've been posting my lessons with my coach, Josh, on our YouTube, and I've been blown away at the domino effect that I've learned right? And I think every golfer needs this like crash course, basic education of the relationship of things. And for me, having a weak left hand grip or the club in my palm mixed with really tight, rigid shoulders is an impossible place to swing
Look at
because,
look at Matt's face. It's hilarious.
right. And now I've learned like
just
having
Matt's like,
yeah, it's just death.
right. It's
yeah, it's
death.
death. He's like, this is death.
But having the right grip pressure in the right place
Yeah.
with some loose shoulders so that it naturally folds and I can get it over on the right arc. Now it's like, yes, it's still a long road. I'm still learning a ton, but at least I know and I have the confidence that I'm putting myself in better positions. I'm giving myself a better chance. Whereas
That's great.
before, I mean, I had someone email us literally yesterday. Sorry, I haven't told you this. And he's like, "Hey man, I've been gotten down to an 11 and I just hit the ball too high. What clubs would you recommend?" I go, "Who the hell's telling you that you're hitting the ball too high?"
Right.
Like, why we're creating problems that might not be a problem. Now, if you live in the UK and you're playing in 30-mile-per-hour wind, maybe you want to learn how to flight the ball down. But
Well,
it's like,
there's a difference between hitting it too high and having too much spin, right? I
right,
mean, if you're hitting it
right,
high and your spin numbers are good, not necessarily a bad thing.
right.
But if you're hitting it
Like,
high and
look
it's
at
spinning
Jason
off the
Day
wall,
and Rory McIlroy, right? Like,
yeah,
so I
totally.
guess my point is that we're trying to solve things without even knowing really if it's the problem. So let me ask you this, Andrew. Going from playing professionally to now coaching, is there anything you wish you knew now that you're a coach
Oh
that
my
would have
God,
made you a better player?
you're opening a can of worms here. All right, let's start with psychology and then end with psychology. Yeah, I mean, I hate to admit it. This is tough. This is very humbling. I know you got some people that are going to be watching this apparently. But there's four types of golfers. You've got your ballers, right? Which are your A talent, just unbelievable talent, and your A mindset. Just the way it is, right? Your speeds and what have you. There's very few. They're like unicorns. You maybe just talk about college rather than the pros because so many of them are already elite in both areas. But then you got your showboats, okay? And your showboats are A talent, B mindset. So, they look like Jason Day on the driving range, and in practice rounds and everything else, they're amazing. And then they go out there and they can't break 76. Okay. And these guys are sensitive. Okay. And emotionally, I would say fragile is a good way of describing it. And it's just okay. It's okay. Pouters. They're pouters. Okay. And probably there's a little bit of a struggle with self-worth, where the self-worth is so connected to their golf shots that if they hit a bad shot, it just is all over. Okay. And that's extremely common. Okay. And then you've got your grinders. Your grinders, they're the golfers that kind of make those college coaches look phenomenal, right? Because the expectations weren't that high. B talent, but they've got the A mindset. And those are the guys that you want on every single team if you're a college coach, because people have always talk about the number 1 and 2 players on the team, right? You saw the young man just won the tournament 2 weeks ago. It's unbelievable. It's extraordinary. That's all everyone talks about. But from a college coach's perspective, let me tell you who's the most important. The number 5 guy is the most important. That score counts, just like the number 1 guy. So ultimately, what was missing for me, and it's been hard for me to come to terms with this, was grit. Was a sense of grit. And, I basically will get my feelings hurt out there, like a lot of kids do. And I know a lot of you guys out there that play golf, you hit a few bad shots, you get your feelings hurt, and you can't reboot, right? I mean, you're the one who writes the computer. It's a supercomputer. You're the one that writes the program. You own the keyboard. And on that keyboard, I'm looking at it right here, is the delete button, okay? And you can either choose to delete and rewrite, or you can just run that bad program. And I think that's what separates, honestly, the best players. And I talked to Justin Smoke about this, and I mean, he would go 0 for 20, and then you have another night, he'd punch out 3 times, And then he'd have to like face like Verlander the next day, right? And what he told me was when he was up playing really, really well, he'd have to bring himself down. And when he was really low, he had to bring himself up. But he knew that the key is he knew how to emotionally regulate. And that ultimately is what the best business people, no matter what field you're in, honestly, there's a wonderful book. I've got it right here. Angela Duckworth, Grit. Okay. You guys haven't read this. Absolutely phenomenal. All
Right.
my elite juniors I work with, this is part of their homework, right? They read this book. And that's what it's all about. I mean, she's a UPenn psychologist, and it talks about the B's talent and the A mindset, and how ultimately the program you write, the thing you think about, you manifest that. And I think had I had that knowledge and experience, this is what, the kids are so much better prepared these days. I didn't have a golf psychologist. I didn't. I was out there on my own, trying to figure it out on my own as an 18, 19-year-old, 20-year-old kid, obviously not emotionally mature. And I had that A talent as an amateur. I mean, I reached number 3 in the country in England and number 7 Great Britain and Ireland. And I won a bunch of huge events. And then I went to tour school. I turned pro a year too early. I was shortlisted for the Walker Cup. And I got all peed off with myself and felt sorry for myself because I didn't make the full England squad that year, England International, right? There's only very few guys get on this squad. But I've been playing golf in the United States, and no one really knew who I was. I just blitzed my way onto the scene. And I was like, Dad, I'm going to turn pro. I'm going to turn pro. And the England selectors, I never, ever forget it. They said, just one more year. Just one more year, And I turned pro. And again, you make decisions based on where you were at the time. I went down to second stage, finished 7th in Spain, and then I went down to Montpellier, played in the south of France, final qualifying Euro Tour, and gained Euro Challenge Tour status. Wound up actually coming back over to the United States, and it was unbelievable. Dakota's Tour, Gary Player Tour, Tommy Armour Tour. I played every single tour you could possibly imagine. And played pretty well initially. I remember I was 70.8 stroke average, played like 108 rounds in a summer. It was crazy.
Yeah.
And it's a crazy, for those of you that experienced this, you guys out there that played the minis and done this stuff. And but I made like $17,800, I think. I think that's what it was. And it's very, very difficult unless you get over that hump and you get through Q score. And I just didn't quite have that inner belief, and that's ultimately what sets these guys apart is, the sort of absolutely resolute, unwavering, unshakable self-belief that you are destined to be one of the best players in the world. Matt Fitzpatrick had it. I interviewed him at the Gleacher Center. He spent a couple of semesters at Northwestern.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was teaching out there. Pat Goss, great guy, is the coach out there. And he came in, he started hitting balls, and I got talking to him. I said, Matt, how did you know? He's like, what do you mean, how did I know? I said, when you turn pro, right, how did you know that you belonged? He said, Andrew, I looked on the range. I think he was at Wentworth, and all the best players in the world, everyone that he would have watched on TV from the age of like 10, right? Think about that for a minute. And he said to me, look me in the eye, and he said, I knew that if I played my best golf, there's no one on that range that could play better than me.
Yeah.
Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah. And I think what's interesting about this, Andrew, such good conversation. When I play my best golf, I know I'm the best. But what you are getting into with your game, and this is so much for all of us, when I'm not playing my best golf, I'm not strong enough to hang in there. I don't know how to hang
what
in
do
there well
what do
enough.
I lean into? Yeah.
I would lean into a cocktail personally. I mean.
Right? Yeah. But and I think that's, it's how do you grind? How do you have that grit when, you just, those first 5, 6 holes just are no good, or you're hitting that shot that you've never seen before, or you just haven't seen it in a while and it freaks you out. Like,
or your least favorite shot. Yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, it's expectations, right? I mean, I told you guys I played Bay Hill a few weeks back, and I had no expectations. I mean, I didn't play October 27th, right? My last round, 15 rounds in last year. I still managed to keep a +1 index. And I played Bay Hill. I've got a little arrangement with Arnold Palmer, half and half tea and what have you. Great guys. And I went down there and I'm nervous, right? I'm nervous because it's like
Mm.
I haven't played. I mean, it's like I haven't played for a couple months. Just like any of you guys would be if you really want to play well, right? Try hard. How's that work for you with golf, right?
Classic
But
story.
anyway, what I did is I convinced myself, like I'm staying overnight. It's like I'm taking deep breaths. I'm trying to visualize the round. And I convinced myself that, and you don't laugh, okay? I said, you know what? Bay Hill is a tough course. They're 2 or 3 weeks out from the tournament. I said, if I shoot 80, I shoot par. So just hang in here for a second. I said, I shoot 80, I shoot par. So what I did is I baked into the cake a couple doubles, a few bad shots, maybe a flub chip and a three putt, or whatever it was going to be, because I'm rusty. Okay. And when I got on the first tee, all right, I don't think I've ever been more relaxed.
Mm.
Mm.
And I proceeded to, shoot 66. I make a bogey on 9 from the middle of the fairway and just, I don't think I really missed a golf shot, right? But ultimately, I wasn't expecting that. Are you kidding me? I wasn't expecting that. But that's a big part of it. I mean, I swung with a degree of freedom and I focused on picking shots and I was relaxed. And I got myself into a sort of optimal emotional state for me. And it's different for everyone.
Mm.
For me, I have to be relaxed and calm. If you asked John McEnroe that back in the day, he'd probably say it's quite the opposite.
Yeah.
So it's not that there's any right or wrong way of doing it, but you have to find the emotional state that works best for you, really.
Yeah. Well, the cool thing about that is you're playing for fun there, right? Like
Yeah,
it's actually quite refreshing to hear that you got nervous because I would think you're in golf.
absolutely.
Yeah, I think that's great to hear because
Yeah.
around like that, you've been around the game a long time, you played pro, you coach, like it'd just be another day. I wouldn't think that you would get nervous. But the cool thing about it is like, you know, it's it's kind of wild what can come up for you in these moments and how golf or Matt said it so many times, golf doesn't define you, it reveals you. Um, but understanding what you do, what my tendencies are. So if I'm nervous, cool, I should be nervous. Well, I tend to get a little quick and I tend not to make a full turn. So I'm going to focus on making a full turn here. You see how you went from emotional nerves to a process driven thing that you can lean into. Um, I think those are the types of conversations that make such a big difference for people. And I'll tell you this, Andrew, I was at Bandon a few months ago and I was playing Pacific Dunes the next day. I was alone. I was maxing up with another three. I was there for some work stuff and um been, this past year I've been hitting the ball worse than I ever have and I've been playing at some of the best courses in the world. Crazy combination, right? And you factor in wind and rain and all that on top of it. And I told this story once, I'll tell it again. I was sitting in the Pacific Grill before my round. I showed up earlier than I thought I needed to, and I'm eating breakfast. And I said, I just made a decision. Instead of what I'd previously be doing unconsciously without realizing it, instead of being worried, nervous, and thinking that I'm gonna is this gonna be the day I fix the problem? Am I gonna find something that fixes the problem? I'm just gonna believe that I'm good enough. I know what to do. I've I've hit many shots. And this, by the way, this might sound crazy to someone that's struggling. And I want to remind people, this is at my lowest, at my lowest. So I don't have the evidence to back this up. But I
Yeah.
told myself, you know, I'm okay. I'm going to be okay. I'm going to lean into the people I'm with. I'm going to learn about
Great.
them. I'm going to take extra time to try and remember every hole and look at the beauty. And I'm going to focus on rhythm and I'm going to be okay today. And I started 2 or 3 under through 6. And then, of course, you get to the 6 hole and it's like, oh, hell yeah.
Now I'm really scared.
Now I'm really starting to put it together, and you get away from the thing that got you there. And that's when I started making doubles and I had to get back to it. But I just want to tell that story because, like, to your example, you had an intention and you made a decision. Par is 80 today. I made a decision. I'm good today. Like, it doesn't matter. I'm going to focus on what I can control. I'm going to focus on my rhythm, and I'm going to look at the beauty. And that was my intention for the day. And that took away some tension. And I made some birdies, which I hadn't made in quite a while. So, I think there's some real power to making a decision and focusing on something productive.
And Andrew, Evan's got his thing. You've got your thing. Mine's different than both of that. When you feel like you're at the right state, and that's what you're trying to teach your students. That's that.
100%. You've got to get your mind into it. You're talking about getting your mind into a state of abundance rather than a state of lack. And if you get into a state of lack, usually the trap is result orientation. That is what pulls you into lack, because you're going to hit terrible shots. It's baked into the cake, guys. You're just not going to pure it, right? If you get yourself into a state of abundance, you're opening up possibility. And
I like that.
And that's the point. And that's what I did, and it's that possibility that it's what breeds confidence. That's the irony behind the whole thing. So it's very, very easy to get trapped up in result orientation. And that's when you start to put yourself through this emotional roller coaster. You choose how you react emotionally. It's called emotional detachment. Okay. And if you decide, you choose to get yourself upset, really, really upset. I mean, really upset.
Or down.
Birdie,
right? Really down.
And you birdie 4 of the next 5 holes, you need to keep getting upset. That's you. All right. I worked with a young lady on the LPGA tour that was just like that. She got to number 6 in the world. I traveled a lot of different places with her. I learned more from her than, it's incredible. And first of all, when you're working with great players, coaches get way too much credit when their players play well, and they probably get too much crap when they play badly, in my opinion. But, what I learned from her was you set your own standards. And because I kept saying to her, don't get upset. I was out there, it's like she's just a little bit offline. She's 25 yards past everybody else. And she's kind of whining and everything. I said, look, we got to let this go. Let's just stay focused. But I didn't really get it, right? I was just learning I was just trying to figure some of this stuff out. She turned around, she said, Andrew, I set my own standards. I'm like, okay, no problem. Right. So I just kept walking down the fairway. I'm like, that's fine, no problem at all,
It's great to be here today.
Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But ultimately, she would like drag the club behind her and get upset. But she'd be like, birdie, birdie, par, par, birdie, eagle. That was her way of firing herself up and saying to herself, come on, I got this. I can do this. Come on. Right? Yeah. And you got other golfers that, of course, getting that emotional state on the first tee, they're just awful, and, it just doesn't work for them. You got to get yourself a lot calmer. I was the latter. I had to be really, really calm when I played well. But mindset, go back to just real quick here. I got to talk to you about Larry Bird. One of my favorite books is Larry Bird Drive. Okay. And I love it because there's no ghostwriter involved in this thing. It's like when he first started out, it's like he's literally sitting in a log cabin up in Wisconsin somewhere and just writing this book. And it talks a little bit about mindset. Okay. And this is what I want you guys and your listeners to understand, because you just got to look at the elite performers to learn from them, right? And learn what worked best for them. And he was talking about, I think it was the national championship game. Was it Indiana State?
Indiana State, yeah.
Indiana State. So how good is Larry Bird, right, in college? It's phenomenal, right? The 3-point shots, the layups, the part. the guy holistically has one of the best games of all time, right? And he's a leader on top of it, right? But in the first half of the game, he attempted like 8 or 9 3-point shots, missed every one of them, like 0 for 9. Okay. So they go in the locker room and they're down like 15, 20 points. And the coach says to Larry, he said, Larry, we're going to have to mix it up. We're going to change things around for the second half. When you're getting double teamed, you're missing all these shots. He said, why, coach? He said, well, you've missed, all these 3-point shots. There's no way we can keep going. He said, coach, the more I miss, the odds of making the next one are that much higher. And he said, the more I make, the odds of me making the next one are that much higher. And the player next to him said, you can't have it both ways. And he said, well, why? Why? So my point is this: if you have the right emotional state and your bad shots are baked into the cake emotionally, it's far, far easier to move on and get through the sort of scratchy part of a round. 10, 11, 12. I played yesterday. As I say, when I played with Justin, I played with Pete. And I'm even through 9. It's a pretty tough course. I haven't played it before. And Pete Skirpstus, he played on tour for a while. He's like a +3 or 4. Hits it 50 yards by me. And I'm talking, I hit it 270. He's 320, right? It's how far he's hitting it. He's playing dog legs and hitting lines that, I'm looking at it like, where is he going, right? And we're tied through 9. We have a little match and what have you. And I bogeyed 10, 11, and I bogeyed 12. And I got a bit of a bad run. And then I'm faced at like 13, and it's like this. With like, water right, out of bounds left. Yeah, we've all been there, right? And it's like, this isn't good. But I stood on the tee and I said, what's the worst thing can happen? My wife's still going to love me. I got 3 great kids. I said, I'm going to go ahead and just let this one go. We're going to add 20 yards on this drive. And I just melted it, right down the middle of the fairway. And I guess that's the point. We've all been there. Now, it's a lot easier said than done. But when you come to realize that there's a couple billion people in China that could care less that you're hitting a weak slice.
Right.
It makes the game a lot easier. And that's what you're talking about, Evan.
Yeah.
When you're out in Bandon, how is that any different?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's so interesting. Mindset, no question about it. Get out on the golf course. That's incredibly important. Play 2 balls. Don't play 1, play 2. Play a 2-ball scramble with yourself.
Andrew, can we dig into this moment in your match yesterday?
Oh, God,
so
yeah.
You go 3 bogeys in a row.
75.
Okay, so you held it together on the back 9.
Held it together.
So to speak.
It wasn't quite feeling it. And it's like the course was just tight enough where doing that all the way around was definitely a little bit challenging. I would say I was hedging. You know how you're hanging on a little bit?
Right. Do you think on that 13th hole, the tight one without a bounce left, water right?
Yeah.
Because it was so difficult off tee, it really got your attention. Like, why couldn't you get your attention earlier on 11? Like, why was this the moment of getting out of the
it's not that
of the little fun.
Here's the thing. It's not that I needed the attention was wrong. It just wasn't there. And that's why I made the bogey. Right? It's just, when you talk about grinding, what grinding is all about is focusing. It's so hard to focus.
Yeah. For that long period of time, for 5
you agree?
hours. Oh, God. Yeah.
Right?
It kills us.
But if you divide the 70 shots by 30 seconds, it's 35 minutes in a 4-hour round.
Right.
So yes and no.
That's the one thing Phil talked about after winning the PGA at age 50. This is the first time in a while I was able to focus. How crazy is
shot?
Yeah.
And
that's really, and even ultra competitive, which he is, and Justin obviously is a phenomenal baseball player. It's the same thing. I asked him a bunch of questions. Trust me, I just wanted to get into his head. It was so awesome. And that's the one thing he said. He just realized coming out of college the expectations were high. You know, he was expected to hit 30, 40 home runs a year. He took him 4 years to start playing well. Justin Rose, how many missed cuts
Oh my
when
God.
he
After,
turned pro?
and he was
Like
young.
20,
Yeah.
25. Think about that for a minute.
At the Great British
25?
Open. Yeah. Third at the British Open. Remember the famous shot?
Yep, yep.
And then he,
But this is my point.
And
When
then
you
he
talk
missed the
about
next
grit,
25 cuts.
okay, so that's grit. That's grit. That's grit.
I don't think
So
I knew that.
that's perseverance. So that's someone that is so incredibly resolute and unwavering that they deep in their heart, succeeding at what they do is as important as breathing.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why it's such a small percentage of people out there that are ultra successful, because what it takes is something else. I mean, there's no question about it. That's why I didn't quite, I mean, I just didn't quite get there because I reached a very high level, but it's like I went through tour school 4 times. But you want to know the truth of it?
yeah.
I should have gone through 12 times.
Mm.
Mm.
Do you see what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
I should have gone through 12 times. Who cares? I'm 39. I'm 40. I'm still going to Q school. It's
Mm.
incredible. You want it that bad. Would I have just kept going? Yeah, I would have probably kept going. Do you see
Mm.
what I'm saying? It's so
Yeah.
interesting.
Yeah.
Like,
Maybe we'll
yeah,
finish with this, Andrew, because I think when I think about everything we've talked about today, I think it comes down to, you broke down multiple types of golfers and how easy it is to start feeling sorry for yourself and getting down. I think everything it comes down to, we've talked to some of the best sports psychologists in the world and the best players in the world and the best coaches. And I think what it always comes down to is, can you get back to competing? And it is so hard to compete when you feel like shit and you feel like you don't know where it's going. It's easy to compete when you feel like you're feeling good. Like, hell yeah, bring it on. Right? It's easy to be competitive and start talking shit and be offensive. But to have the courage to do that and the self-belief that you're not that far away,
The discipline.
and you just lost focus, you weren't focused on the right thing, you fell into some bad habits, you weren't focused on what you were doing, you get back to the things that help you do it, what help you, and you compete. Now you start to get offensive again. Now that's kind of what you described on, what was it, the 13th tee? You accepted the bad, but you kind of competed in that moment.
no question. No question. I mean, if you ask yourself the 3 questions, I ask this of all my students, okay? What did you learn? I mean, what did you do well? What did you learn? And what can you do better? That's the cycle. All right.
Mm.
What did you do well today? Not what happened today. What did you do well today? I didn't do anything well. Really? Let's talk about that for a second. All right. Again, you're in that pity cycle, right? We got to get you out of that. Playing bad doesn't make you a bad human being. I kid you not. This is no joke. I almost broke my hand on my steering wheel at one tournament. That's how upset. I've seen grown men cry at tour school. You talk about you guys out there, recreational golfers, that are struggling. Try when you're at tour school, there is nothing. Even the most elite golfers, they know what it's like. It's unbelievable. Okay. But you've got a choice. You can either and again, you can feel sorry for yourself. It's okay to do that. I'm not suggesting don't, but you have to process that and you have to flip that energy. And it's all about energetics. I can tell you right now, energetics is the answer for everything in life. We're all energy. And that's getting you into that mindset, and getting you into a positive mindset is all about taking what you did poorly and learning from it and then growing and expanding. And it's a rare person that's able to take the worst things in life. There are people that have had incredible lives that were in concentration camps, guys. Okay. And have gone on to inspire people, incredible human beings in the worst experiences that life could ever afford them, that have gone on to have be incredible human beings. If anyone should feel sorry for themselves, it's someone like that, right?
Mm-hmm.
And here we are whining about missing bad golf shots, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I think it's all about perspective. I think it's all about, learning and figuring out little tiny incremental improvements in each area. And whether that be your mindset, that you learn from, not so much your physical score, but your emotional score when you go play. Have two scores. You know, keep your emotional score and challenge yourself in the most crazy way to bridge the gap between how bad you score and how good your mindset is.
Yeah.
That's the challenge. Because then you're putting yourself in a very, very elite level emotionally by learning how to detach yourself from what you just did. And I think that honestly is the big challenge. You know, I mean, emotional detachment is what I see elite golfers be able to do, because that enables them to refocus. They don't get so caught up in it. So very, very challenging. It's a wonderful game. You guys know it. I mean, it's incredibly, the longer I teach, I feel like the less I know.
That's not true.
I kid you not. I'm one of my 30,000 lessons in coming up here. And it's like, really? You know, so yeah, you just keep learning. It's a phenomenal game. It's a game for life, you know. I mean, I just love it. So
it's the best. This was
Andrew,
a lot of fun.
This was great. I mean, I think we barely scratched the surface. So we'll have to have you back and dig into more of your personal stories, your own game.
Thank you.
But Andrew Emery Golf on YouTube, andrewemerygolf.com.
Andrew
Anywhere else you
Emery
want to send
Golf. You got it. Yeah, you can always reach me on my contact page on my website, andrewemerygolf.com. Love to serve anyone that feels like they could use a little help. So remember, guys, don't overthink it. Don't overthink it. Keep it simple, okay?
Yeah. I also want to say one final reminder, your example of, you know, the perspective, I think it's also just reiterates, as I've experienced this myself, the power of knowledge in the sense of what I do and why I do it makes it so much easier to have emotional detachment, because the panic button doesn't get pressed because I know what I'm doing. My coach tells me our big goal is if it goes right, it's not that, oh shit, it went right. It's that I held on. How can I go back to my thing to release it? Right.
And the red sirens don't need to go off.
And it doesn't need to go off. I just need to get back to what I do. And that's an entirely different way to play the game, but it's very difficult to get there. Remember, it's easier to say than do, but it's easier to do if you have the knowledge of what you do.
Yeah,
so
no, it's getting into the process. It's like all things, always your result, you know, that's a net result. It's not a result. Right. You know, it's the process. And you get caught up in the process again and try and detach results, you get results. It's the ultimate head, you know what.
Right.
It really is. But that's what I've learned, as I say, all these years with working, especially with the elite golfers. They just do things a little differently. Hopefully I've been able to share with you guys a little bit of what I've learned. And you know, I think everyone can find a better version within themselves. I think it starts with, you know, who you are as a person when you're out there and just keeping your perspective, and start with gratitude. That's what I always do. I'm like, I can't believe I'm playing this golf course. This is phenomenal. Yeah. Obviously, I'm not trying to say, look, enjoy playing bad golf, right? I mean, that we all want to play better golf, but you know, the way you react to bad shots is enormously important, and everyone can improve on that part of the game. All right, that's really big, but I think so.
100%.
Well, that's great, Andrew. Thanks for coming
Andrew.
on. This is a
thanks
treat.
for hopping aboard.
Having
have you back soon.
Really appreciate it. A lot of fun. Thanks so much.